Hello everybody, and welcome to the Hidden Realms update for the item and equipment tier list. Before we jump in, know that this is an update to the already existing list. I'm not going to make an entirely new list until there are enough changes in a single update to warrant a complete re-ranking of most items. So if you're a newer player or simply want an overview of all the items, check out the June update tier list. However, you'll need to mind the changes in both the Skills 2.0 update and obviously this video. And if you prefer, there is an easily accessible spreadsheet version on Google Docs maintained by Tarobi. Thank you, by the way, dude. So check that out if you want a more concise view. Links to all that stuff is in the description. Here are the rankings I'll give each item and their definitions. An F means you pick these up and hope a 3D printer eats them. D items have their uses in extremely specific scenarios, but otherwise don't do much or don't scale well. C ranks are for the inconsistently good items, so ones with pretty good effects that you can't take advantage of very often. B items are good, but don't always synergize with what you currently have. A means it's a versatile choice that is almost always going to function well with whatever you currently have. And finally, S is the creme de la creme, the best of the best. All right, I'll start here by covering a few old items that need re-rankings and get into the new items after that. Let's begin with a few honorable mentions that were changed with the update but are not receiving a change to their rank. Starting with the personal shield generator. While the item was reworked with the December update to now provide a percentage shield relative to your max HP rather than only a flat amount, I'm leaving its rank at a D. If you want to go Transcendence, then shield gens are absolutely more beneficial than they used to be. However, if you are not playing around a full shield build, then I highly recommend to avoid all shield gens. This is because just 2 shield gens will ruin your one-shot protection upon taking at least 10% of your HP worth of damage, which will happen quite a bit at the time, to say the least. The point still stands that regular HP is better to build around in 99% of situations. You are putting yourself at a disadvantage with shields from the lack of leech and regular regen. It's as simple as that. Predatory Instincts, an already great item, received a 50% increase to its duration. While this change is nice and does make the item more consistent, it's not quite enough to push it into S tier, and so it remains an A. Next, the Happiest Mask saw a 5 times, yes you heard that right, increase to the ghost damage, but a decrease in the proc rate, and honestly the only situations where the item was useful were when your ghost drew aggro off of yourself, and now that the proc rate is down, it will be doing that less often. So the buff and nerf to me cancel one another out, and its rank remains a D. For Brittle Crown, the removal of the flat gold reduction, which was the least relevant part, was not enough to bump it up in the slightest. Still a D tier item. The Beetle Gland now spawns all guards at once, so 1 per stack of the item. This means you're a good protector, boys. Will be up more often with multiple stacks. However, it's still not a great item and remains where it belongs, down in D tier. You're not really looking for more stacks. Wow, we sure have a lot of D tier items so far. For equipment, the Eccentric Vase received a massive 50% increase to its acceleration and a more than 50% decrease to its cooldown. Sounds pretty awesome, right? Well, at least until you remember that it's still in your equipment slot rather than something actually useful. Oops, still in D tier. I promise I'm not doing this intentionally. Now let's move on over to the old items that were changed enough in the update to actually receive a different rank. Rusted Key did not receive any buffs to its effect, rather to its appearance. It is larger and much easier to spot, and these changes are enough to get it up into C tier. Without even trying, I managed to find it easily on at least every other stage, and if you stack enough keys to warrant hunting it down every time, you will no longer waste a massive amount of time doing so. It'll just pop right out of where it's sitting while you're busy traveling around the map as usual. It pains me to say that the mighty Topaz Brooch is going from an S to an A. Okay, it's not as dramatic a difference as you may have thought because the item wasn't actually touched, rather Barrier itself received the change of not having its own one-shot protection separate from your own HP. If you have no idea what I'm talking about, check out this video talking about one-shot protection in detail and know that Barrier no longer applies to your one-shot protection at all. Note that one-shot protection still functions exactly the same way for your combined max health. Nothing has changed in that regard, so keep stacking Shape Glass for free runs is what I'm telling you. War Banner no longer drops from combat chests, so it is now an S tier item. I'm just kidding, it's still D tier, it doesn't change. The infamous Red Whip climbs out of the depths of F tier all the way up to D tier. Absolutely amazing. Jokes aside, unless your playstyle is to instantly rush the teleporter and use the gold you end up with to then go back and buy all the items, which you should not be doing until you're like an hour into your run, then sadly the changes to the whip were not enough to warrant a huge bump up in its rating. Don't get me wrong, it is better, but I'd much rather have liked to see its buff not cancel upon skill use rather than not taking damage. And yes, I am aware that the pure mobility skills such as Huntress's Dash or Commando's Roll do not interrupt its effect, but the vast majority of skills do in fact still cancel it. Brain stocks. Now here is a great example of a meaningful change. Not only were its numeric values buffed, but also, and more importantly, its visuals as well. Essentially, you'll be getting its effect for a longer period of time, but you'll also react much faster to when it actually begins due to your entire screen turning red and your character getting this cool lightning head looking visual. These combined changes addressed exactly what Brainstock's lowest points were, and thus it goes from D tier all the way up to a fat B ranking. Not quite an A because remember, no cooldowns does not mean spamming every frame of gameplay. There is still a 1 second cooldown between using the same skill, so in reality, you'll be able to pop anywhere from 4 to 5 uses of something before the effect expires. Still, its changes are very welcomed and have been a long time coming. With that, we now move into the brand spanking new items introduced with the Hidden Realms. Fresh Meat gets a C. I like to think of its effect as a more consistent monster tooth. Its heal is lesser in value but higher in duration, plus with the added benefit of not needing to be collected. If the HP regen stacked upon killing multiple enemies, so 12 HP over 3 seconds if you kill 2 monsters, 18 for 3 monsters, etc., then it would be significantly better, not only in the early game, but even mid to late-ish, depending on how many stacks of it you have. However, rapidly killing multiple enemies simply refreshes its duration and does not increase the amount of HP restored. So as it currently stands, it will slowly trickle your HP up after a kill, and it does it for a longer duration with more stacks, which warrants a C ranking. Gore's Tome also gets a C. The scales over time wording simply means that the 25 gold, I know it's meant to be dollars, but I think gold sounds better, scales the same as everything else in the game. You will always get an amount equal to exactly 1 common chest or multi-shop. On paper, this sounds like free money, and yeah, it is. However, in the full context, the low proc rate means the gold you receive will maybe save you from farming for like 1 chest per stage, and that is a big maybe. In a perfect situation, you'd get a Gore's Tome out of the first chest you open on stage 1 and get at least 1 pile of gold per stage before you even fight the teleporter boss. Otherwise, the gold you get is turned into XP and essentially useless, and then you need to replicate this on every single stage for the next 45 minutes. That is when Gore's Tome is providing you its fullest potential, and at all other times, it's gonna be an occasional influx to your money and nothing else. Next up is Razor Wire. This might be the most exciting item to come with the update to me. I'm giving it an A. Not only is its effect quite useful, basically a ukulele that triggers whenever you take damage from any source, but it also has the almighty proc coefficient, which means its scaling potential is very high. I don't know the exact number as of now, but I'm assuming it's anywhere from as low as 0.3 to as high as a 0.5, either of which are very good values. For context, the ukulele's proc coefficient is 0.2. The reason Razor Wire doesn't get into S tier is due to you needing to take damage for it to do anything, and on top of that requires enemies to be nearby. It is still a very strong item and synergizes particularly well on Rex due to his self-damaging skills and even some off-meta, if you will, stuff like Hellfire Tincture. All in all, it's a very cool item and easily deserves A. The Resonance Disc is a new legendary item, and while it is an extremely cool item, it isn't quite good enough to reach S tier either, so it gets an A. The numbers are not what's holding us back from S tier, it's the consistency. You not only have to kill enemies for it to charge up and eventually fire, but you also have no control over what it chooses as its target. Yes, it does some AoE damage in a line when it's traveling and in a circle when it explodes, but it could choose to do that damage to a group of beetles rather than the overloading Eldamurian that just spawned across the map. However, do not fret, it is still a very strong item to receive from a legendary chest and especially a large chest. There were 2 lunar items with this update, both of which rankings need a little more explanation than usual. For the Beads of Fealty, these provide no real quote-unquote benefit for your run, but rather do something at the end. If you didn't know, this item, when in your inventory, will provide access to a secret boss fight upon reaching the Obliteration Obelisk in the Celestial Portal. If you take the boss down, you will receive a total of 15 lunar coins and end your run as if you obliterated. It does nothing but provide you access to the fight, so if you're a skilled enough player to regularly reach the Obliteration Portal in your runs and don't feel like going for hours upon hours, then you should pick some beads up for sure. Note that stacking it has literally no effect, so if you buy more than one, you are simply wasting your coins. And that brings me to my other point for the item. If you're struggling to the point where you'll probably die before you get a chance to obliterate, then do not pick the item up. At the bare minimum, you are wasting 1 lunar coin to acquire it from a lunar pod, and that will literally do nothing for you. However, in all other cases, if you think you will eventually obliterate, then you should absolutely pick 1 stack of beads up whenever you find them. It gets a B. For the other lunar item, we have Visions of Heresy. If rating the item on its effect alone, I'd give it a B at most. However, it, like the Strides of Heresy, completely replaces an ability on your survivor. So you have to take that context into account. And a large part of that context depends on your playstyle. For example, if you've seen my Loader or Acrid guide, you'd know that while both are melee survivors, the most optimal way to play them is with a ranged playstyle, meaning that past the first few stages, their regular attacks, which is what Visions replaces, are pretty pretty useless. You're not in melee range for the majority of a run, therefore picking up visions and getting a ranged replacement for said melee ability may be a very good option. Again, however, its effect isn't even that good, so is it worth spending the coins? Probably not, if you ask me. I could go through and give you an explanation and hypothetical situation on every survivor of when to take visions, but there's really no point. If you think the item is cool and want to try it out, go ahead. You'll find whether or not you like its effect well enough to keep using it very quickly. And if you just want a Needler from Halo, then this is absolutely the item you take. Moving now to the new boss item, the Genesis Loop. As cool as the item is, you literally just get a Wandering Vagrant's massive explosion. Again, the consistency is the issue, and I have to give it a C. The only way for this item to activate is upon reaching 25% of your HP. Think of Genesis Loop as a defensive mechanism and nothing else. You essentially have no control over when it activates and instead have it as a safety net of sorts. If, rather, when you undoubtedly reach that threshold in a run, you will get a quick little screen clear of anything that has less HP than a boss monster. Yes, the engineer theoretically can get more use out of the item due to his stationary turrets reaching low HP much more often than you will, but in reality, if the turrets reach 25% health, they're more than likely just going to straight up die before the explosion can even go off. The item is cool, but not really useful. C tier. These next two items are yellow, which is the same color as the boss items, but they don't drop from a boss. Rather, you obtain the pearls from a cleansing pool, which is a random spawn on a stage. The only way to acquire them is to find a pool and then sacrifice one of your lunar items at random from your inventory. It's essentially a 3D printer for lunar items, but you get a pearl as an output. The regular pearl provides you with a 10% max HP increase, while the irradiant pearl gives you a 10% increase to all of your stats, but only has a 10% chance of popping out of the pool, compared to the regular pearl, which has 90%. Here's my problem with the pearls. They require you to spend lunar items, not coins, to get them. Lunar items require you to intentionally pick them up, as in you are directly choosing to take a specific lunar as part of your run. The reason you're making such a choice is twofold. Number one, you have to spend coins on them, and they are premium currency that should not be wasted. Insert text file editing joke here. Number two, you are not going to choose to take a lunar item that directly inhibits a certain aspect of your build, meaning you're never going to pick up a corpse bloom or a brittle crown except under very, very specific circumstances. Now, back to pearls. Why in the world would I trade in my lunars for these things? I specifically made the choice to take any and every lunar in my inventory. Why do I want to lose them, even if I get the small chance at getting a small benefit to my stats? It just doesn't make sense to me. Unless you are going out of your way to pick up every single lunar item you find and rip your lunar coins and the run, by the way, getting pearls just makes no sense. I'm not even going to give them a rating because I just cannot justify acquiring them in any situation. Last but not least, here we have the new equipment, Jade Elephant. I'm giving it a B. The 500 armor buff it provides is a whopping almost 85% damage reduction. That is an absurd amount. I don't have to explain why taking less damage is good, right? Okay, cool. I will explain, however, why Jade doesn't get a higher rating. If you guessed that is something to do with consistency, then you'd be right. While the fat 500 armor is indeed a fat amount, it's not going to be there all the time, and even if it is there, it's not going to be getting used all the time. What I mean by that is just because you pop the item in retaliation for being in a scary situation, you may end up getting out completely untouched and just wasted the entire cooldown for no real benefit. So getting this thing to perma or near perma uptime is quite strong, but only on a case-by-case basis. I've said it in a few other videos and all the time on my stream. Your best bet at any time is to kill things before they kill you. So damage is a top priority, meaning you'll want an equipment that does damage and not give you utility and or defense. Now, of course, there are many reasons to take a non-damaging equipment, but for the most part, damage is going to be your best bet. So the Jade Elephant gets a B. All right, and that does it with the December update to the item and equipment tier list. Have different thoughts on some rankings or need a question answered? Leave a comment below. I read them all, I promise. Also, consider leaving a like or dislike on the video to further let me know your thoughts. You could check out my stream over at twitch.tv/Woolie Gaming and consider joining our Discord server as well. Thank you for watching and have a Merry Christmas, everybody.